Hello, my fellow minor league nerds, and welcome to our newest franchise history episode. This is actually part one of a three-part series looking at the 126-year history of, mostly, professional baseball in the Canadian capital. The earliest mention of a baseball team in the city that we could find was on Baseball Reference for a team that played in the Ontario League in the 1880s. But that was all the info we could find. While searching for the Ontario League, the only one we could find any information about was a league that played one season in 1930, and there was not a team located in Ottawa. The first professional team to play in the Canadian capital was the Ottawa Wanderers of the Eastern League in 1898. The Eastern League being an early name of the modern International League. The team began the season as the Rochester Patriots, but after running into financial troubles, they relocated to Ottawa, playing their first game on July 13th. They played 2 games at Lansdowne Park and then started playing at Metropolitan Grounds Mondays through Saturdays and Hull Baseball Ground over the river in Hull, Quebec on Sundays, as playing baseball on Sundays was illegal in Ontario at the time. In Rochester, the Patriots went 23-38. They were much more successful during their time in Ottawa, going 29-18 through their 47 games as the Wanderers. But the bottom fell out in August, and they lost 14 of their last 15 games, finishing 53-70, 18.5 games behind the pennant-winning Montreal Royals. The team went through a lot of turnover during their 62 games in Ottawa. Their top hitters were Quiet Joe Knight, who finished second in the league with a .338 average, and third baseman Bill Keister, who hit .322. The team did not return in 1899. The next team to take up residence in Ottawa was simply called the Ottawas in 1906. They were members of the outlaw Northern Independent League, not to be confused with the Northern League. An outlaw league was any league that was not part of the National Association of Professional Baseball Leagues, or more commonly known as minor league baseball. As an outlaw league, the Northern Independent League did not honor the contracts of players in other professional leagues, becoming a safe haven for contract jumpers or players who had run afoul of the National Commission. The league was known as the Northern New York League between 1900 and 1905, changing its name after Ottawa joined. A team from Montreal had applied for membership in the league as well, but they were rejected, leading to the odd decision to play as a 5-team league. The Northern Independent League relied heavily on players with college baseball experience, including many who still had college eligibility. Those players played under assumed names so as to not lose their eligibility. The caliber of play in the league was comparable to that of the highest minor leagues. Player salaries were capped at $400 a week, though most teams completely ignored it. The Ottawa's owners Henry Sims and John Kane wanted to field a competitive team from the start and managed to lure Arthur W. Daly from the defending champion Montpelier Berry team to serve as their first manager. Daly brought with him Frank Shag Shaughnessy, future president of the International League, spitballer Vedder Sitton, and former Georgetown infielder Johnny Dorman. In addition, Daly signed at least 5 future major leaguers, including Red Murray, who left in mid-June for the St. Louis Cardinals to begin an 11-year run in the National League, center fielder Ray Demmett, who played under the name C.R. Ray, joined the big leagues in 1909, having a 7-year career with 3 different American League clubs. The most famous member of the Ottawas at the time was Arthur Doc Hillebrand, who was a pitcher and right fielder. He never made it to the majors, but definitely had the talent of a major leaguer. He had a long-running contract dispute with the Washington Senators, which made the Northern Independent League one of his few baseball options. Hillenbrand had been a baseball and football star at Princeton, and at 29 years of age, still was one of the most popular sports figures in the country at the time. The owners of the Ottawas had agreed to pay the travel costs for the 4 other teams to travel to and from the Canadian capital for the season. It was a decision they would soon regret. The Ottawas began the season at home with a 6-0 win over the defending champions on June 25th, with Hillenbrand throwing a 6-hit shutout. According to the Ottawa Citizen, the team drew at least 2,000 fans to its first 5 home games at the Varsity Oval, home of the University of Ottawa GG's football team. A season-high 3,200 reportedly attended the Dominion Day game against Plattsburgh, a team that included future Hall of Famer Eddie Collins, former Cleveland Nap Billy Lush, and pitcher Snake Weltsey. Like most teams in the league, the Ottawa's owners did a fantastic job at recruiting players, but not such a great job managing their finances. Their revenues were not covering their hefty expenses, which led to them turning to the league for assistance on July 18th. The league responded by deciding that visiting teams would pay their own travel costs on their final trips to Canada. The league also decided to officially drop the $400 a week salary cap, since most teams ignored it anyway. Plattsburgh, the only team to cast a vote against the plan, folded the following day due to their own financial issues. The league carried on with 4 teams. In August, it appeared things were looking up for the Ottawas when they rattled off a 6-game winning streak, moving into a first-place tie with Burlington on August 9th. Things went downhill when they went on a 7-game losing streak. On August 18th, Rutland forfeited its game against Burlington after the Rutland players refused to play until they were paid their back wages. Rutland's owners responded by fining the players for insubordination and then disbanding the team. Ottawa was the next team to fold, having accumulated a deficit of nearly $6,000, officially folding on August 20th, bringing an end to the Northern Independent League. The Ottawas finished in second place with an 18-16 record, 6.5 games behind Burlington. Shaughnessy finished with a .297 average and a .484 slugging percentage. This being the dead ball era, he hit 5 home runs and was dubbed the home run king of the league by the Ottawa Citizen. After the demise of the league, Shaughnessy continued playing and managing throughout the minors, marrying Ottawa native Kitty Quinn in the fall of 1907. In 1909, she joined him in Roanoke, Virginia, where he became the player-manager for the Tigers of the Class C Virginia League through the 1911 season. Kitty would grow to miss her family in Ottawa. As a devout Catholic, she felt out of place in the Protestant South. This led to Frank to begin to formulate a plan for the family to return to Ottawa and for him to gain more control over his baseball career. In 1911, a 4th version of the Canadian League was formed with teams in London, Hamilton, Brantford, St. Thomas, Guelph, and Berlin. It turned out to be a pretty successful season for the league. Despite the Northern Independent League's demise, Shaughnessy felt Ottawa would be a good fit for the league and relocated his family to Canada looking to secure a team. In Ottawa, he was able to find partners and financial backing for the team, with Ottawa officially being awarded a franchise in December 1911. The Peterborough Petes were also added for the 1912 season, making it an 8-team circuit. With the addition of the 2 teams, the league was moved up from Class D to Class C. Though it was expected Shaughnessy would lead the new Ottawa team, named the Senators, he had already signed a contract to play for and manage the Fort Wayne Railroaders of the Class B Central League. If he had hoped for Fort Wayne's owner, Claude H. Varnell, to let him out of his contract so he could lead the new team, he was dead wrong, as Varnell said the only way he could get out of the contract were if he were to die or give up baseball. Even with it looking like he would not be able to get out of his obligations to the Railroaders, Frank spent the winter and spring building the Senators. His first order of business was to negotiate a deal for the team to play its home games at Lansdowne Park, where they would play Monday through Saturday. Sunday baseball was still not allowed in Ontario. A number of sites in Quebec offered to host the Senators on Sundays, but Shaughnessy decided against pursuing that idea. By the end of March, he had to depart for Indiana to lead the Railroaders, leaving veteran second baseman Lewis Clark in charge of the Senators. Their home opener was Thursday, May 16th, which was Ascension Day and therefore a civil service half-holiday, meaning more fans could attend the games. The team arranged for the Ottawa Electric Railway Company to use specially decorated streetcars for the occasion. There was a parade with the Governor General's Foot Guard Band playing. Members of Parliament were in attendance, and Ottawa Mayor Charles Hopewell threw out the ceremonial first pitch. Unfortunately for the Senators, though, it would rain all day and continue through Friday, with the team finally being able to take the field on Saturday to face the defending champion Berlin Busy Bees, formerly the Green Sox. With almost 7,000 fans in attendance, the largest for a game in Lansdowne Park's history, the Senators defeated the Busy Bees 7-1. In a bold marketing move, they allowed 30 to 40 automobiles to park down the right field line. The team was aware of the city's growing automobile population, which was believed to be about 400 at the time. They began offering drive-in baseball at the ballpark in what was likely a first for baseball. Fans could drive right in and watch the game without even leaving their car. They had a strong start that season, with pitcher Joe McManus winning 14 straight games. On August 17th, in front of 4,500 fans, including 60 motorists, the Senators would win their first Canadian League pennant with a 2-1 win over the London Tecumsehs. The season ended on Labor Day with the Senators holding a 63-35 record, 9 games up on the Brantford Red Sox. Though Shaughnessy enjoyed his time in Fort Wayne, leading the Railroaders to a second-place finish, Kitty wanted him back in Ottawa. He was able to secure his release from Fort Wayne for a $750 fee. The 1913 season opened with a Senators' 8-7 loss in Brantford on May 7th, but saw them give them a walloping the following day when they won 11-4. The 1913 season was a successful one in the stands for the Senators as fans flocked to their games. On Saturday, May 24th, they played a morning-afternoon doubleheader, which was typical for the time, seeing 1,000 fans show up in the morning and another 6,000 for the afternoon contest. It included 52 on-field cars, about 10% of the cars in the entire city at the time. On the field, the team was mediocre, seeing them lose 7 straight at the end of May. The poor play led Shaughnessy to blow up the team, suspending or trading away many players. He ran into some legal trouble on July 8th when the team was still struggling, when he was charged for hurling abusive language at a spectator with ladies present during a game in St. Thomas. He was later found guilty and fined $10 for calling a fan a loafer, which apparently was quite the insult in 1913. The team would later have 2 winning streaks of 9 and 13 games to move back into second place, moving into first place in early August. Their winning ways continued through that final month, but they were unable to pull away from the London Tecumsehs, who kept it tight all month long. Going into the last day of the season, they were on a 4-game losing streak, but secured their second pennant when they defeated Peterborough 14-2 in front of 7,000 fans at Lansdowne Park, finishing 1 game up on London. During the season, pitcher Erwin Renfer won 17 straight games. By 1914, baseball had grown in popularity in Canada, with some saying it was the country's national pastime. At that time, Canada had a population of about 8 million, with 19 teams spread across 5 minor leagues. The NHL had not yet been formed, and its predecessor, the National Hockey Association, only had 6 teams the previous season, located only in Ontario and Quebec, while the Pacific Coast Hockey Association only had 3 teams, which were all located in British Columbia. For the 1914 season, the Canadian League replaced the franchises in the smaller towns of Berlin and Guelph with ones in Toronto and Erie, Pennsylvania. By adding the 2 larger cities, the league was moved up to Class B. The Senators' home opener on May 14th was a 2-1 loss to the Toronto Beavers and was played in front of 4,500 fans from across all social classes of Ottawa. The Governor-General of Canada, Prince Arthur, along with his daughter Princess Patricia, were in attendance. 2 members of the Senators' bullpen sat with them, explaining what was happening on the field. Shaughnessy was no longer willing to lose out on potential revenue by not playing on Sundays. On the first Sunday of the season, more than 5,000 fans crammed into Dupree Park in Hull, Quebec, which had a capacity of 4,500. The overflow sat on the grass in front of the grandstand, and cars were parked 2 deep down the left field line. The Senators fell to Toronto 6-5. Not all were happy with the team playing baseball on Sundays, though. A group called the Lord's Day Alliance, a Presbyterian group established in 1888, had persuaded Prime Minister Sir Wilfrid Laurier to introduce the Lord's Day Act, which passed in March 1907. It prohibited sport, entertainment, and most commerce on Sundays. The Alliance and other religious organizations decided to challenge the legality of the games. Charges were eventually brought against Shaughnessy and the Senators, taking more than a year for a verdict to finally be handed down. On August 6, 1915, Judge Goyette ruled that the Federal Lord's Day Act could not be used to deprive Quebecois of the rights and liberties they enjoyed prior to its passage. Baseball on Sunday afternoons had been part of life in Quebec for 30 years. Since provincial law did not expressly forbid such activities, the federal legislation, he ruled, was not applicable. Restrictions under the Act were relaxed in the 1960s, and it was not fully repealed until 1985. By mid-July, the Senators were 8 games behind league-leading London. But Frank Shaughnessy was not going to give up. "London's lead is big," he said, "but there's plenty of time, and I'm confident I can overtake them." He was willing to spend whatever it took to turn things around and win another pennant. He skipped a series in Hamilton to go on a scouting trip to Michigan to find new talent. He signed 19-year-old shortstop Jack Mitchell for $1,000, reportedly the most ever paid for an infielder by a Class B club. Mitchell went on to hit .344 for the Senators. Pitcher Urban Shocker had struggled in his debut season of 1913 as a breaking ball pitcher with Windsor in the Border League. Shaughnessy suggested he try the spitball, which led to him becoming a dominating pitcher, so much so that teams in higher leagues took notice. He ended up making his major league debut in 1916 with the New York Yankees, playing 7 seasons with the St. Louis Browns before ending his career with the Yankees in 1928. At the end of the month, the Shagmen, as the papers had often called them, went on a tear, reducing London's lead to 4.5 games by August. On the 3rd day of that month, they swept a doubleheader over the Hamilton Hams. But excitement over their improved play was dimmed by the news that Canada had joined Great Britain in declaring war on Germany the following day, entering the Great War. The Canadian League kept on playing, despite the declaration, and the Senators kept on winning. On August 18th, they pulled to a half game behind London after defeating the Brantford Red Sox 8-3 at Lansdowne Park, which now had soldiers training for deployment to Europe camped around the edges of the outfield. With a week and a half left in the season, Ottawa traveled to London for the biggest series of the season. They ended up taking 3 of the 4 games to finally overtake the Tecumsehs after chasing them for 57 days. The season wasn't over yet, and things were about to get really interesting on the last day of the season. Ottawa was in first place with a 75-45 record, holding a .625 winning percentage. London was in second place with a 69-43 record with a .617 winning record, a difference of .008. Both teams had doubleheaders scheduled at home to close out the season on Labor Day, with the Senators hosting the Peterborough Petes and London hosting the St. Thomas Saints. If Ottawa swept their games, they would win the pennant. But the weather across the province wasn't looking promising as a cold, low-pressure system settled in. There were numerous possibilities of how the season could end depending on how many games were won by each team. To make things even cloudier, London's manager, Doc Reisling, devised a plan to play a triple header to make up for a rainout earlier in the season, of which London, like the rest of the league, had many. The weather lifted in London, and the Tecumsehs were able to get in Game 1 and defeat the Saints 4-1 to move within a game and a half of Ottawa. In Ottawa, where it had rained in the morning, Game 1 was able to start up, but was halted in the second inning when the rain started up again. It finally let up, but the infield was soaked. Knowing the importance of getting the games in, Shaughnessy had his groundskeeper douse the infield with 21 gallons of gasoline, burning off enough dampness so that the game was able to start back up, with Ottawa going on to win 6-2. Now with Ottawa's victory in Game 1, 3 things had to happen for London to win the pennant. The rain had to hold off in both cities. The Tecumsehs would have to beat the Saints for a second and third time, and Peterborough, who had their ace, Louis Shetler, on the mound, would have to shut down the Senators in Game 2. In the end, all 3 happened, but Doc Reisling's gambit of scheduling a triple header failed. In Ottawa, as mentioned before, the rain did hold off, but after a couple of chilly and scoreless innings, Shaughnessy and Peterborough manager Curly Blount were able to persuade the umpire to call the game on account of the cold, ending any hope of London and handing the Senators their 3rd pennant in a row. The news, of course, did not go over well in London, with the London Free Press declaring that the fix was in, as the cancellation of Game 2 only came upon discovering what a loss to Peterborough in the second game meant. Whether it was Shaughnessy's cunningness or just dumb luck that led to the cancellation of the second game in Ottawa, the fact remains that the Senators came back from 8.5 games out in July to win 42 of their last 55 games to secure their 3rd consecutive pennant. In the end, though, it wouldn't have made a difference. The Canadian League president, going by the laws of the National Commission, ruled that the 3rd game wouldn't count in the standings, as teams were only allowed to play 2 games within a 24-hour period. Despite the exciting pennant race, the Senators saw a 40% drop in attendance over the final month of the season, which could have been caused by the start of the Great War in Europe. The team took a loss of $2,700. The 1915 season, which saw the Canadian League slim down to 6 teams, began with much less fanfare as Canadian boys were dying on the fields of Flanders and northern France, while Canadian Prime Minister Robert Borden was contemplating conscription, and a German U-boat had torpedoed the Lusitania, killing 1,193 passengers and crew. As was the case with the last 2 seasons, the Senators got off to a slow start. By June 4th, they were in 5th place and played .500 ball for the rest of the month. At the start of July, they took off. I mean, they really took off, playing .705 ball the rest of the season, on their way to finishing with a 72-39 record, finishing 12.5 games up on the Guelph Maple Leafs, winning their 4th straight Canadian League pennant. Their attendance dropped again, this time by 50%, with the Ottawa Citizen reporting that Ottawa had the championship clinched so early this year that the enthusiasm fell to shreds. After the season ended, in which Shaughnessy and the Senators lost money again, he arranged a series of well-attended games in Ottawa against 2 barnstorming black clubs to help bolster the team's bottom line. The Senators swept the Cuban Giants, who came in from Buffalo, in 5 games, and took 3 of 4 from the Havana Red Sox, who were from Watertown, New York. With the Great War still raging on, the Ottawa Senators and the Canadian League would not return in 1916. Well, my fellow minor league nerds, that'll do it for this episode. Be sure to keep an eye or ear out for the next 2 episodes that continue with the history of professional baseball in Ottawa, Ontario. And until next time, stay safe, and be sure to never stop supporting minor league baseball and never stop learning about minor league baseball history.
This podcast is part of the Curved Brim Media Network. Here are some of the other members of Curved Brim Media.
Hi, this is Ed Rivera of the Dad Hat Chronicles. Join me as I interview people just like you and players, coaches, GMs on the path that led you to become a fan of the sport.
I'm Paul Caputo, and on the Baseball by Design podcast, I talk to minor league baseball teams, designers, and other super interesting people about what these minor league baseball logos mean, and I talk a little bit about ice cream helmets.
What's up, Bucketheads? I'm Anna DiTomaso, and each week on the Baseball Bucket List podcast, I speak with a different fan about their favorite baseball memories, what the game means to them, and what's left to check off on their baseball bucket list.
Hey everyone, it's Eric from the great state of Kansas.
This is Johnny from the New Orleans Baby Cakes Memorial Museum.
And we are the Earn Fun Average podcast,
where we talk to a variety of guests about their love of baseball and have fun doing it.
America, lower your standards.
Average is what we do best.
This is Patrick and Corey of BaseballMapper.com, and we have made an interactive map to help highlight all baseball teams from the majors down to collegiate summer leagues.
We want to bring you closer to baseball, so get on the site and find a team near you today.
Hey guys, this is Patrick Larson from the Minor League Baseball Hat History Series, and in every episode I go through the history of minor league teams through my personal collection of hats. You can find me on Twitter at PatLarson1. I hope you guys enjoy.
Learn more about Curved Brim Media at curvedbrimmedia.com.